y'all, welcome back to my channel. NiziU is back with Too Bad. I'm so excited for this. Don't forget, if you want any of your favorite K-pop songs to end up on our Fandom Favorite Top 30 chart, you check that in the description box below. Let's go ahead and get started. You check that out in the description box down below. Let's go ahead and get started. Ooh. Oh. I love the electro pop feel in the background. Like, ooh. Backing vocals are nice. Ooh. Ooh, fun. The backing vocals are so nice. Whoa, that was a cool transition. Ooh. Ooh, nice. I love how they added all the backup dancers too. Gives it a really feeling of being filled up completely. Ooh, those ad-libs and backing vocals, okay. So pretty. Nice. So nice. Okay, I really enjoyed this song. It was so fun. It has this like electro pop kind of feeling, like really forward thinking. I love especially in the instrumental at the beginning, and it happens throughout the entire song, but it has this like little electronic sound. I don't know how else to put it, but it has this melodic part to it, and it's just really catchy, and it's in the background basically the entire song, but it just like makes you want to move, and that's what this whole song did. It just like made me want to move the entire time. I love how the introduction from the very beginning, it was started out very quiet and did this crescendo going into the first verse, but with that first verse, it like didn't get too loud. I felt like we had like this constant increasing of volume throughout the entire thing. So it really had like this ebb and flow to it, which is really nice. I really love too the backing vocals in all of this. I mean, you could notice them basically from the very beginning until the end. They had so many backing vocals, harmonies, little ad-libs that were coming through. Really nice. In the first pre-chorus, I love how they changed with long notes, but in the second pre-chorus they increased the speed, so that was really interesting. So the chorus, I love the way it went. I didn't write down all the words because I couldn't type that fast, but it was like ba 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 too bad, ba 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 too bad. So like this, it had this rhythmic part to it, and it had two separate parts to the chorus. So it had that part for the Too Bad, and then it went to the second half of the chorus was a lot more melodic. There was more singing, but it still had the phrase of too bad in it. So by the time you got to like the end of the song, you had kind of part of the chorus, or most of the chorus, already learned because it separated itself. So I really thought that was great. In pop music, it's so important to have things that are memorable and that you can learn very easily and quickly, because that's how it gets into your brain and gets stuck there and doesn't let go. That's very important in pop music. In the second verse, we have the rap, and very, very light and airy. Something that I really liked about this, because I'm not a huge fan of rap, is that it just, because it was like rhythmically interesting and it still like melodically went along with what was happening, it was really a really good transitioning part into the pre-chorus. And I love that transition with the can. Like, I think they kicked it or something and it went into another room. I thought that was a really smart idea. And then this time, like we talked about, this pre-chorus ramped up higher because it had like the steady beat pulse, and then it went. So something that you can do in music is you like have long notes, so like half notes, which would be like ta 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 ta, and then you can go faster, ta 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 t t t t t t t t, like that makes things naturally get faster. And so that's kind of what they were doing within that, is they were speeding that up. So I really enjoyed that aspect. And then they did this, I want to say they did this on the first one, before the first chorus. Yes, before the first chorus, they had a pause. But this time, rather than having a pause before the chorus, they did this little pulling away thing. And then it sounded like they had this transition of the "Say You Want to Love Me Too Bad." That part was quiet. Like, there was not a lot of sound to it before adding that instrumental back in. Silence is so important. Pausing is so important in music, because it makes you anticipate what's going to come next. So I thought that was a interesting way to change it up. So especially because it feels like, you know, then you're not being repetitive, and that's really important. Repetition is both good and bad in music. I guess that's not good and bad. How do I want to say it? If you do too much of the same thing, it becomes repetitive and boring. But you want to have repetition in order to learn things easily. But you want to change certain things about it so that it creates a difference in anticipation of what's to come. So what I really loved is it has the phrasing, like the phrasing part, right? And then it launches into that. So by having that little pause in there, but still going to the chorus, like, you know what's going to come, and you've heard it before. So that makes you like excited for that, but it's not 100% the same. So that's important as well. I hope you guys understand what I'm saying. I felt like I explained that a little strangely, but I hope you get it. And then we go into the bridge. Oh my goodness, I have to talk about the bridge. So many incredible ad-libs and the backing vocals. I was like, this is incredible. So good. Absolutely love that. And then the final chorus just continued to grow and grow and grow until the very end. I also loved how they had a whole bunch of dancers in there. I thought that was really, really smart, and gave a difference in what we were seeing. You know, difference between the first part and the ending. So I really enjoyed that as well. So tell me what you guys thought about this. Did you love it? Did you hate it? What was your favorite part of this particular song or MV? I have to say, I think the chorus is probably my favorite part. I really love that rhythmic change of what was it? Say You Want to Love Me Too Bad. Like that. I really enjoyed that aspect of it. And I really enjoyed the transitions throughout this piece. I think that was really, really cool. Don't forget, if you want any of your favorite K-pop songs to end up on our Fandom Favorites Top 30 chart, check that in the description box down below, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.